The stretch and pitch. Swung on and popped up again. Off third. Hayes has room. Hayes makes the catch. Yankees win. The Yankees win. The New York Yankees have won the 1996 World Series.
Let's go back to a more pleasant time when there was baseball in packed stadiums, no cardboard cutouts. Let's go back to 1996 when the New York Yankees were the underdogs. Yes, the Bronx Bombers were once the underdogs. The Yankees hadn't won a World Series in 18 years. Jeter was starting out, Strawberry was coming back, Bernie owned center, and the setup belonged to Mariano. Of course, Joe was in the dugout, and the boss was in control of everything. And the fabled bleacher creatures, well, they were completely out of control. I was fortunate to be there for that unforgettable season. I lived the incredible spirit of '96. Before a rare weekday matinee in September against the rival second-place Orioles, a veteran colleague approaches me and prepares me for a potential ambush. It's humid, the sun is scorching down, and it seems as if everyone is tanked. It's been 18 years since the Yankees last won a world championship, and the bleacher creatures, Yankee Stadium's rowdiest of rowdies, smell blood. Me, I'm selling weenies. If you got a can opener, use it, a fellow vendor advises as we stand in line waiting for the francs to be dumped into our sturdy aluminum bins. You might have to pull some eyes out. I'm nervous. Right out of the tunnel, the sun hits me in the eyes, and I break into my routine succinct pitch. Hot dogs, hear ya? I bark, attempting to match the crowd's intensity. I want to walk up the stairs, but can't. Up a few flights conspicuously right in the middle of the aisle, a ragged middle-aged man desperately wants my attention. Already he has everyone else's. He rocks his hips back and forth and grabs his crotch. I've got a hot dog here, he slurs. I got a hot dog here, he repeats even louder. He's absolutely obliterated, and he clearly wants a showdown with a weenie man. Okay, you want a showdown with a weenie man? I'll give you a showdown. Welcome to the major leagues. It started with an assignment. It wasn't just any assignment. It was for a new magazine which promised real money, unlike the crummy newsletter which had just laid me off. But there was a catch. The mag wanted me to work undercover as a vendor. I was psyched. This assignment was a challenge, plus it emancipated me from my desk in my small apartment and placed me firmly in the house that Ruth built. Almost immediately, I went to work, putting in a call to Volume Services, the company that ran Yankee Stadium's concessions. They gave me a day and time and told me to show up for an interview at the stadium. When I arrived weeks later, I'm escorted to the stadium's basement with about 30 other hopefuls. There are empty tables throughout the room. I take a seat and wait. No one's too excited. Then again, it's 1996. Back then, the Yankees hadn't won a pennant in 18 years. Yankee captain Derek Jeter was just starting his career, whereas now the Yankees played a full houses nightly. The old Yankee Stadium felt like a ghost town. I handed my application to my interviewer, a Tony Danza lookalike in a blue zippered hooded sweatshirt who sits across from me. As we converse, other applicants are being interviewed simultaneously. Now, Tony's studying my application. Somewhat anxious, I abruptly break the awkward silence. I want to be part of the baseball experience, I tell him. Tony nods politely as he confirms that I haven't written my name in the address space and that I'm not displaying any Ted Bundy tendencies. I leave 3 references. They ain't calling no one, a fellow applicant blurts out just outside the stadium, waving her finger like a Jerry Springer Show audience member. Fortunately, they did call me. Weeks later, I'm one of about 25 rookies who show up at the stadium for orientation. We're an eclectic crew representing every imaginable race, creed, and color. We tour the legendary grounds. In the first few rows of the upper deck, we stand in silent awe as we examine the seemingly endless vacant rows of blue seats and the immaculately groomed field. Beyond the outfield wall, the 4 subway train is going by. It's a majestic, unforgettable sight. Unbeknown to my fellow colleagues, I'm on assignment, albeit by the skin of my teeth. I'm not the mag's first choice. Fortunately, none of my colleagues wanted the vendor assignment, and I was ready and willing, qualities that had served me well in the past. A senior editor at the mag, Felix, had finally got around to calling me about the vendor assignment. "Can you do it?" he asked impatiently. He'd probably already reached out and been turned down by a healthy roster of reporters. As Felix waited for my reply, I considered my prospects. Besides a writing assignment here and there, I was picking up odd gigs. This fit right in. "I'll do it," I told Felix. During orientation, my vendor brethren and I meet the vendor commander-in-chief, who has the tone of an intimidating drill sergeant. Built like Joe Girardi, she lays down the law. Hustle hard at all times, except during the national anthem, at which time you stand at attention. Do not run into or over patrons, throw merchandise such as Cracker Jacks or peanuts, or keep foul balls, and don't sell in the corridors, the passageways in the interior of the stadium. Also, appearance must be conservative. Long or dyed hair and piercings are absolutely forbidden. George Steinbrenner, the team's owner, who was dubbed the boss by the newspaper tabloids, was uptight and on top of everything, including vendor appearance. Before games, the boss was known to investigate the premises, searching out imperfections such as unshaven vendors. On my first day, I report to the bowels of Yankee Stadium 2 hours before first pitch, as vendors are required to do before every game. This allows the hawker higher-ups enough time to assess how many vendors are present and where they should be assigned. The basement's odor is unforgettable, the smell of old ketchup. I'm directed to the rookie vendor locker room, a low-ceilinged, drab closet with high school-style lockers, where I change into my uniform of heavily starched white pants and blue jersey. Moments later, I am the good humor man. As I wait in the corridor, I can't ignore the funky aroma of vendor dinner. It smells like last week's Beans and Franks. The veterans, men who sell beer, the most coveted item, sit against the wall, calmly talking among themselves. This is a closed club, and the beer vendors don't acknowledge anyone who isn't in their crew. Meanwhile, I manage to overhear the conversation between a set of twins, two dark-haired diminutive men wearing glasses. "I hope they give me ice cream," one chirps to the other. "I really want ice cream." "Why won't they give me ice cream?" "What's so special about ice cream?" Later, I learned that ice cream is light and extremely popular with kids. It's often purchased in bunches because kids travel in packs. Since it's arguably the lightest item, it often goes to women, who make up a minuscule percentage of the vendor workforce. I wind up making small talk with a brawny construction worker, Luzinski, who's returning to vending after a 3-year sabbatical. Like myself, he's anxiously shifting his feet. "I'm a little nervous," Luzinski confides, avoiding eye contact. I don't know why. 40 minutes before first pitch, the mass of blue and white clad vendors crowd toward the end of a tunnel. A tall, lean man with a bulldog voice and glasses booms out assignments, which are decided by seniority. Veteran vendors get the holy grail, beer, and make about 18% commission plus tips. Rookies like myself start at 13% commission and get less popular items, such as soda on a chilly night. Later, I learned that if I work about 2/3 of the games, my commission will be upgraded the following season. Neophytes sell the worst items in the worst places. Ice cream at night in April, just about anything in the sparsely populated mezzanine, or worst of all, the dreaded all-sport drink, a Gatorade knockoff, which I dubbed the Green Monster because it's heavy and tough to sell. The rumor is that the boss owns a piece of all sport. Few first-time vendors return to the stadium after a night lugging around the monster. On the other hand, old-timers, some of whom have worked at the stadium for decades, sell beer, which can net as much as $500 on a very good night. Another popular item is peanuts. They're light, and because they cost $3.50, customers will often allow the vendor to keep the change. 100 sales selling nuts, you do the math. However, there's a downside to nuts. Some fans request that their nuts be thrown to them, which is forbidden because it's a lawsuit waiting to happen. For my debut, I land Yankee souvenir plastic cups filled with cola in the left field upper deck. No easy task, considering the tray of 12 mammoth sodas isn't light, the soda isn't cheap, and we're definitely not in the throes of a heat wave. Most daunting, the steep, narrow steps of the upper deck rival the Himalayas. I refuse to look down at the field, keeping my eyes focused on the steps that are directly in front of me. As I slowly descend the stairs one step at a time, I feel as if I'm one false move away from having my tray fall on outfielder Darryl Strawberry, who's in the midst of a comeback. I can't watch Straw patrol the outfield because I have to concentrate on not falling down the stairs. As I avoid legs that spill out from the seats and into my walking space, the newsman in me can't help but envision the next day's New York Post headline if my balance betrays me. Soda Man bombs Straw Man. Despite the physical strain, I pitch my product with a vengeance and, to my surprise, people actually buy from me. Money aside, I push for sales so the tray will become lighter. Souvenir soda, hear ya? Get your soda, hear ya? Shouting is cathartic. I'm no natural, but I can do this gig. I'm gaining confidence, one stare and sale at a time. Eager kids surround my tray and wave dollar bills in my face. Fans bounce into me and don't apologize. When you're a vendor, you're part of the furniture. Welcome to the Bronx, says a young cotton candy vendor. After a few innings, I've worked up a good sweat and my voice is hoarse. There are several vendor reloading areas, commissaries, throughout the stadium. I refer to them as pits, narrow tent saunas where vendors pay, reload product, vent, and rehydrate, the latter of which can be tricky. When there are no spare styrofoam cups or courtesy cups available, which is often, dehydrated vendors gulp cola, the only drink available, in the cups reserved for customers. In short, customer cups equal cash. I repeat, customer cups equal cash. Management assumes that a cup of soda was sold, so after drinking out of the customer's cups, vendors return them to the cup supply area and mix them with the untouched cups. How many customers drank out of cups that were first used by vendors? Damn good question. By the 7th inning, it's vendor quitting time, and I return to the rookie locker room, which is slowly growing on me. Everyone is still hyped from the game, and perhaps all the caffeine. I peel off my sweaty uniform and throw it in the humongous hamper. I change back into my street clothes, having made $53, weary but exhilarated. I will sleep well tonight, and I won't be working out tomorrow morning. Actually, I can't work out tomorrow morning. Vending is exhausting. After the first night, Luzinski goes AWOL. There's no shortage of vendors, though, who run the gamut from civil servants to actors to teachers to accountants. Lots of accountants. Vending is their part-time gig. When the Yankees are out of town, some of the vendors hawk at nearby Shea Stadium, which has a reputation with some of the Yankee vendors as being somewhat of a hawker boot camp because it has much stricter rules. Beer vendor Rick Goldfarb, a.k.a. Cousin Brewski, who works as an accountant, is the stadium's most well-known vendor. He has passed out Get a Buzz from the Cuz pins to his loyal clientele and has appeared on local radio, showcasing his Catskills-style humor. Brewski quips vendors have a low divorce rate because they're too busy working on weeknights and weekends to spend time arguing with their spouses. Brewski might be onto something. Within the vending ranks, there's no shortage of colorful characters. One is nicknamed Baltimore because he commutes from there for games. Baltimore also works games in Philadelphia and Atlanta and aspires to hawk at the Super Bowl. Inexplicably, it doesn't appear as if Baltimore vends for his hometown Orioles. Often, Baltimore performs play-by-play in the locker room, oblivious to the fact that he's ignored. Another famous character is known as the Rabbi. He claims to be an actual rabbi, albeit one without a congregation, and he's painfully methodical when he makes change, to the chagrin of many a fan. Another vendor is known for touching himself in inappropriate places before serving his hot dogs. I have never met this individual, and I really don't want to. For the most part, I don't communicate much with my vending brethren, as hawking is a solitary endeavor. Plus, I'm a rookie. Most of the veterans figure that rookies will succumb to poor sales and disappear. Charlie Hustle is the exception, though. I'm not sure if Charlie Hustle told me his name, which wouldn't be too unusual, as many of the vendors remain nameless to one another. Vendors know each other's faces and what item they hawk, and if they can move it or not. Hustle's talkative, though, and we strike up a conversation. A Bronx native, Hustle is a lifer. That's the vendor term for guys who live for the gig and will not leave the job unless they're fired. On occasion, when Hustle hawks dogs, I trail him with my soda tray so customers will have the opportunity to have a drink with their dog. Customer service isn't my sole purpose. I enjoy watching Hustle work. He's quick like a cat. Like Pete Rose, he hustles as if his life depends on it. Like the real Charlie Hustle, he also takes chances that could cost him his job. He nags customers for tips, sells in the corridors, and works every angle imaginable. Before games, he hangs out in Monument Park, where there are plaques and tributes to retired Yankee greats, and takes pictures of fans with their cameras in hopes of getting a generous gratuity for his trouble. One day before a game, Hustle pulls me aside and fills me in on the dark side of vending. "There's lots of scams around here," he says matter-of-factly. One particularly odious trick, retrieving used beer cups off the ground, getting them refilled from one of the concession counters in the stadium's corridor, and then reselling them. This is basically a cash cow because the vendor will pocket the total sale. Certainly, Hustle isn't the only one working it. As I learned later, theft is an accepted part of Yankee Stadium vendor culture. If you want to make money, explains a burly pit foreman to me after a game, you gotta cheat. I play it straight and sell hard. I genuinely enjoy vending. Perhaps it's the physicality or the tangential connection to professional sports. At the ballpark, life is simpler. Most of the time, the harder I hawk, the more I make. When I enter the empty Coliseum, I can practically feel the aura of Yankee Hall of Famer Lou Gehrig standing at home plate. "I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of this earth," Gehrig unforgettably told the crowd on the day of his final appearance. Being at the actual stadium day in and day out, you do feel very lucky. Batting practice, which I take in from the bleachers, is a soothing symphony, the periodic whack of the bats and the balls smacking leather. Walking the stairs gets the juices going, and barking out the names of the items is cathartic. When I bark, I do it with the enthusiasm of Aerosmith lead singer Steven Tyler. I see more baseball than I ever imagined. Just like the vendor locker room, the game grows on me. I follow the action a little, but not too closely. As the game plays out on the field, I play my own game, testing myself to see how much product I can move. I sell sodas with ill-fitting plastic covers that blow off at the merest hint of a slight breeze. I push the Green Monster, pitching it as a low-cal alternative to hot dogs. I work the pricey field-level seats, the land of the wealthy, where the Wall Street crowd hits you with tips and stylish women flaunt their midriffs. On a few nights, I even nab the Holy Grail, beer, albeit not one of the popular brands. Still, it's an honor, especially for a rookie. Gradually, I evolve into somewhat of a salesman. I don't blindly shout. I present my product climbing every stair of every aisle to maximize my product's exposure to the widest possible audience. I frequently drop to my knees to avoid obstructing lines of vision and fully extend my body to hard-to-reach customers. Some vendors, specifically beer vendors, wear knee pads underneath their pants to provide cushion. Beer vendors spend an inordinate time on their knees because pouring is a time-consuming process, and beer customers usually ask for more than one. Like many vendors, I walk at a brisk pace and consider myself somewhat of an athlete. I give accurate change. "You're doing something positive," one fan tells me. Finally. Even when it's raining, I show up. The Yankees are making a run at the pennant, and I don't want to miss a single pitch. During the rain delay, I meet the rookie, a Baltimore Orioles player who had just been called up. In the slight drizzle, he's walking around left field near the seats. The rookie is the sole individual on the field, and he has a starry-eyed look in his eyes, probably similar to the one I had during my vendor orientation. I'm in the first row with a few vendor colleagues, studying the manicured wet grass as raindrops pelt the near-empty cathedral. It's peaceful. The rookie and I are about the same age, and somehow we start conversing. He looks up into the rows of empty seats and tries to envision what it would look like full. "It must be something," he says. As he surveys the empty seats, he wonders aloud if his ex will show. "She lives in the area," he says wistfully. That day, the stands remained empty. It was a rain out, and I didn't get paid. That's the thing about vending. It's commission plus tips. If you don't sell anything, you get nothing in return. Well, that's not completely true. The rookie was the only player that I talked to the entire season. Not surprisingly, everything isn't charmed at the ballpark. A few vendors guard their assigned sections like personal fiefdoms. A few will take aggressive action if they believe that their section has been encroached on. During one afternoon game, a vendor came after me aggressively because he believed that I was an aisle into his assigned section. "Get out of here," he barked, pointing his finger. I thought he was an off-duty cop because of his authoritative tone. I retreated, not wanting to create a scene. I already knew that that guy was a jerk. Later I learned that the guy was an accountant. Yes, another accountant. Another knuckleball for vendors is dealing with belligerent fans, particularly inebriated ones. When a young fan, a punk, who's looking into his binoculars barks, "Get the fuck out of my way, soda boy," I take exception. It's a weeknight game, kinda chilly, and sales are tepid. My wall isn't up, and I'm vulnerable. When I'm hawking, an attitude seems to give me an advantage. There are beer muscles, and then there are vendor muscles. Not much difference between the two. After I've worked 6 innings holding the monster, my vendor muscles are pulsing, and I'm ready for just about anything. As he peers through his binoculars, I stare at the wannabe tough guy like I'm staring down an opposing pitcher who just threw at my head. When he finally locates me through his lenses, Binocular Boy's expression turns to fear, perhaps even horror. When the inning ends, I go in, tray and all. In so many words, I tell him to watch who he's talking to, pointing my finger for emphasis. "Okay," he offers apologetically. The fans who sit in the bleacher seats, which are actually benches and cost only $6, often act out like European football hooligans. Known as the bleacher creatures, they menace yuppies. Everyone in a suit should be shot. They heckle fans in the adjacent upper deck by urging them to jump and tell women to show their tits. Belligerent behavior is the norm in the bleachers. Located in the outfield, they're basically a separate island compared to the rest of the stadium. Here, all the regulars know one another. Think cheers with profanity and way more beer. There's the queen of the bleachers, Tina, a lean, tough-talking waitress who serves as the boss of the section. She controls the mayhem, telling people when and how to cheer and whatnot. Statman, an unshaven, taciturn man wearing a 1970s-style oversized headset, sits near the front making notations on a scorecard. In the back of the section, there's a designated person who bangs a drum to assist with the cheers. How do you get into this club of fanatics? Same way you get elite vendor status. You keep showing up. Selling dogs requires more concentration than soda and other items. Each dog transaction is hopefully a quick, methodical process. Right up front, I collect the cash and place it in my smock. If I allow that little matter to slip my mind, which is very possible considering there are an array of distractions, I'm picking up the tab. Then, I get down to the business of preparing the dog. I remove the bun from the plastic wrapping and place it in a napkin, making sure that the bun doesn't touch my bare hands. I spear the dog from the aluminum bin and place it in the bun. As far as condiments, I don't bother asking the customer their preferences. I just place some ketchup, mustard, and relish packets between the napkin and the dog. If they don't want the toppings, they'll toss the packets in my aluminum bin. Maybe they'll throw me $1 for my trouble. After being a vendor, I become a much better tipper. It's funny how that works. Selling dogs in the bleachers becomes my regular spot. I like the easy incline of the steps, and I appreciate the creatures because they keep things interesting with their outrageous antics, and because they share a certain kinship with the vendors. They're the blue-collar fans, and we're the employees who do the down and dirty work. They appreciate our work ethic, and they save their vitriol for the opposing team, most of the time. It's September, the Yankees are on the verge of making the playoffs, and I'm in my regular bleacher spot hawking dogs when I come across that intoxicated man who's doing everything in his power to make me feel uncomfortable. "I've got a hot dog here," he shouts as he points at his groin and thrusts his hips forward. "I've got a hot dog here," he repeats even louder, relentlessly baiting me. Everyone seems to be amused at the spectacle, everyone except me. I'm embarrassed. With all the excitement, my vendor muscles are in mid-game form, and I want to confront him verbally like I did with the binoculars punk. I'm ready for a showdown. Call it drunk man versus weenie man. But something stops me and I don't engage. Instead, I turn my back, walk in the opposite direction, and carry on. Soon enough, the situation dissipates. This is how you tame a heckler. Whether you're a player or a vendor, just ignore a heckler. It'll do the trick. Promise. Right before the playoffs, my long-lost editor Felix, whom I haven't heard from all season, calls. It's not a complete surprise that we haven't spoken. My article isn't supposed to run for a while. When we finally connect, Felix has no time for pleasantries. "Where's your copy?" he snaps impatiently. "I'm still working at the stadium." "You're where?" he asks incredulously. "I'm at the stadium," I reply calmly. "I'm working." In my defense, he hasn't given me much guidance. No parameters, no deadline. I just took the ball and ran with it. "You're like George Costanza," Felix laughs. He's not laughing with me. I don't mention that I've convinced my friend to enlist in stadium work. Felix would probably snort back, "What? Are your parents working there too? How about your cousins?" "Just keep track of your expenses," Felix finally says, exasperated. Felix is cool about expenses. During the playoffs, tensions mount as the Yankees show signs of faltering. Fans and vendors alike are ultra fragile. With the season's end imminent, I'm brooding over my next move, and so is Hustle, who's down. He's considering going back to school, or becoming a cop of all things, as he's not exactly a rules and regulations guy. I'm still young, he tells me. I need another job. Morale hits a low when the rookie vendor locker room is burglarized. Fortunately, I never stored anything of value in that sweltering, gloomy box that had become somewhat of a second home. Fortunately, the Yankees make it to the World Series. I'm psyched. I'm not ready for the season to end. Unfortunately, Game 1 is a washout. Literally. Finally, the rain ceases and the fall classic commences. Before the games against the Atlantic Braves begin, my fellow vendors and I sit in the stands and soak it all in. Everything feels different, even the air. It's hardball in October. "This is World Series batting practice," Baltimore announces excitedly before Game 1 as hordes of media types amble by, ignoring him just as his fellow vendors do. Baltimore taunts the incoming crowd with tomahawk chops. He's embarrassing, but no one can control him, except maybe the boss, who is nowhere to be seen. Fortunately, just about everyone ignores Baltimore, who claims that he's flying down to Atlanta to work those games as well. After the Yankees get slaughtered in the first 2 games, everyone's understandably somber. Concession sales plummet. No one can eat a thing. With the series going to Atlanta for the next 3 games, vendors bid their farewells. Then something magical happens. The Yankees snare the next 3 games in Atlanta to bring the series back to New York for the clincher, hopefully. Game 6 completely grips the city. It has been 18 years. At the entrance, Yankee gatekeepers were taking $20 bribes from fans and allowing them to sneak in. Back then, real tickets were the norm. It was pre-9/11, and you didn't have to be frisked at the door. Game 6, 1996. It turned out to be one of New York's last great parties before the city and the world changed. After 5 innings of Game 6, the crowd's energy intensifies and hot dog sales stop. Sales hadn't been that great to begin with during the postseason, unless you were one of the elite veteran vendors who got to sell special souvenir programs, which were going for something like $25 a pop. And then there was one very fortunate souvenir vendor who earned $8,000 in commission for Game 6. Call him the $8,000 man. In the postseason, the actual game on the field takes center stage. No one wants to eat. However, I'm still in my game, hustling hard to get whatever sales I can muster. I want to play my game to the last possible out. As usual, I see little of Game 6. I don't really need to. I can feel it. When I walk up the steps, I can't help but notice that all eyes are focused intently on the field. Heading into the 6th, the Yankees are leading and everyone's standing. It's so close to being over. I want it to be, and I don't want it to be. My every move becomes monumental. I dramatically remove my price badge and hand it to a woman who says that she's an MTV VJ. I go to the pit, pay up, and check out. I don't go to the locker room. Instead, I head to the field level seats right behind third base, where the man, the editor-in-chief of the mag, not Felix, is sitting. This is a first. The ballpark has been my oasis, and I've successfully kept my 2 worlds separate. At the stadium, I haven't hung out with any non-ballpark people, civilians, until now. It's cool to hang out with the man, but it's also somewhat awkward. There's a disconnect. Understandably, the man wants to enjoy the final outs like everyone else. I, on the other hand, want to talk vendor minutia. For the past few months, vending has been my game, my diversion, my obsession, my resurrection. With the man to whom I handed my uniform as a souvenir, I managed to restrain myself. I attempt to focus on the game and be a civilian, a fan. When the Yankees win, everyone rejoices 1999 style, even though it's 1996. We belt out New York, New York, and we are the champions, as Wade Boggs rides a policeman's horse around the field. Look up glorious moment in the dictionary. This is it.
Yankees win! The Yankees win! The New York Yankees have won the 1996 World Series.
Thanks so much for listening. Spirit of 96 was written by Jon Hart at Man vs. Ball. Narrated by Louie Max at Grind&Pivot. Audio engineer Ian Litovich at Ian Litovich. Social media, Spur Digital Media at Spur Digital Media. Special thanks to Russ McMahon, Fontana, Dorothy, Mitch, and Adrian Smiley. Spirit of 96 was produced by Jon Hart, Ian Litovich, and Louie Max for Grind&Pivot.